by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors. Of course, you can always reach out to us. We can get you some help on any questions you have for the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, or any outdoor adventure that you're on. Let us know, and we'll get you help with Wyoming Game and Fish Department or one of the experts that we have on the show. And we have a couple of experts today. Brian Woodward, of course, from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, and Corey Grizz Stovall will let us in on kokanee fishing and give you some tips on that. And Dan Thompson from Wyoming Game and Fish Department is with us. And Janet, you obviously with us every week, and give us all this access to Wyoming Game and Fish so that we can pass on great items of information. And Dr. Dan Thompson is with us today, and the Grizzlies are starting to wake up, but which kind of seems a little strange since we had such a big snowstorm just not long ago.
It's one of those deals where we all lock ourselves indoors for a little while, but then we come out when the weather is nice.
It's kind of like we're hibernating bears, right?
Exactly. Kind of like what the bears do, which is why we have Dr. Dan Thompson with us, our large carnivore supervisor out of Lander, to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on with the bears. And like us, they're kind of starting to peek their heads out a little bit and notice that the snow is melting.
Well, Dan, it's always nice to have you on. And, you know, when you're on, that means the bears are starting to lurk and become restless. And one of the things you see on social media is everybody wants to be the first person to catch a bear on film or pictures. And it seems as though a couple of weeks ago we had a mid-March bear come out of their den. And is that kind of on the norm of time frames?
Yeah, we start to see a few bears coming out in March. It's kind of an ongoing joke that Yellowstone almost every year has to give a report of the first bear out in early March, and then nobody hears about anything for weeks. But, we're pretty used to having some bears out in northwest Wyoming starting in March in certain areas. You know, what we see generally speaking is we see the males come out first. Females, if they have young in the den, they'll be usually the last to come out. So sometimes not until May. You know, bears are unique in that they give birth in the den. You know, they have an interesting evolutionary trait where they breed in June, but the egg's not implanted. It's called delayed implantation. It's not implanted until the fall. So they can have all their cubs at the same time. Every female that's pregnant can have their cubs basically at the same time, late January. And it's a neat evolutionary trait that we see with bears. And so because of that, we see those bears that have cubs coming out later, generally speaking, than those males.
Is it fairly common to see a sow have multiple cubs at the same time?
Yeah, it's pretty common to see 2 to 3 cubs in a litter for both black bears and grizzly bears. Yep.
When a bear is pregnant with multiple cubs, do they know that at the time, or are they just aware that they have a big baby inside of them?
Part of that delayed implantation, they don't have good enough body condition. They don't have those cubs. And we don't really see it here. Usually we have all our bears are pretty healthy, but they'll make a den and they have those cubs. But the cubs are really small. They're about a pound when they're born. So they're just little fur balls there at the end of January, and they're fully active, nursing when they're born.
So when they're in the den, is mom still in and out of hibernation, and they're really just acting on their own?
Yeah, basically. Bears are unique in that they can wake up in an instant, and so they don't go into that deeper state like small mammals do, like a squirrel or something like that. But they do. They're, like you said, in and out. That's pretty good way to describe it. You know, we've put some cameras on bear dens before, black bear dens, and actually had observed a female coming out and getting some bedding, like from pine trees, for the cubs a couple times. But they can't spend too much time out or they're going to take away their fat reserves.
When you think of the black bears and the grizzly bears hibernating, are they fairly same, or do they have different hibernating characteristics?
Yes and no. There's a lot of similarities as far as that denning behavior. It's pretty similar. The delayed implantation, timing of birth. The big the big difference is that grizzly bear young spend an additional full year in the den with the mother. In the fall, as yearlings, the yearlings will go back into the den with the mother and spend an additional year with them. So that's why grizzly bears are a little slower reproductively than black bears.
So then how often will a black bear and then a grizzly bear have cubs? Will it be multiple years in a row for the black bears?
Basically every other year. Yeah. Grizzly bears are usually every third year. Okay. And they don't usually have their first litter till they're 4 or 5 years old.
When a black bear or grizzly bear are coming out of the den, they're obviously trying to fatten back up. What are their actions like when they do come out?
Oh, a lot of stretching, I would imagine. It is unique. They don't defecate while they're in the den, so they got their own spring cleaning they got to do when they come out. Based on our telemetry and collar data, there's a kind of a short time period where they're still waking up. Just as you can imagine, being really sleepy or hungover or something, maybe, there's a little adjustment period before you're fully normal. And so we see that with bears, but then, they start looking for food, and a lot of times they'll look for easy food like winter kill. And so definitely this winter in certain areas of the state, there's plenty of winter kill for them to be had. And then they just kind of, black bears scavenge a lot, and they key in on the fresh green up, the high nutrients in that, and the fresh green up, and follow that as vegetation changes.
You just mentioned the wild, crazy winter that we just had. Will that affect those bears and when they come out?
Yeah, we honestly really haven't seen any dramatic changes in like den emergence based on localized weather. We don't have enough data to suggest that they're going to stay in longer necessarily, but obviously some bears might realize that it's not worth getting up yet that early. But what we will see is especially more grizzly bears that den a lot higher, they'll come out basically somewhat regardless of that, and then they'll come down to an area that has food. So while there might be, some individuals that are staying in longer, that the snow and the winter don't really impact that denning chronology. What it does hopefully look like for bears is a really good food sources for this summer. I mean, I'd expect a lot of greenness in areas that have been pretty brown, and so
berry production.
And berry production. I mean, it's easy for us as humans to focus on the negativity and of this winter being long, and believe me, I was there a few times in cabin fever too. Yeah. But looking long term, we got to look at this moisture as a benefit for a lot of wildlife species.
Dan, a lot of times we talk about aggressive animals when we talk about bears. It just kind of is one of those things that we always tell people to make sure that, to be prepared and know your surroundings. Is there a time of year that they're more aggressive than others? Is there a difference in the timing?
Bears are not necessarily more aggressive, but they're a lot more active in seeking food at a higher level in the late summer and early fall when they're putting on fat for the winter. And so usually we don't necessarily see as many issues with aggressive encounters with bears. Now, we definitely still see potential surprise encounters between bears and humans as more people are recreating, because then those bears are also looking out. We've had some instances of some pretty severe maulings that have occurred with grizzly bears with people that are out and about in the spring, which is kind of new. But again, that's more of a surprise encounter scenario. And we know bears will actively defend their personal areas and their food and their young. And so that's the things we're looking for.
So
but they're not necessarily more aggressive coming out of the den. They're a wild animal. They're not a zoo, or they're not a pet. They're not things that you see on TV. So, yeah.
And those maulings that you had mentioned and interactions with the bear's not out looking for humans to eat. It just happens that they're taking care of their surroundings.
Yeah, the strong majority of those aggressive encounters or human injuries, and even worse, are the result of surprise encounters or those bears acting defensively. Predatory actions from bears are extremely rare.
If someone is out on a hike or a hunt, or they're just out where bears live, what should they always be carrying with them or have on them at any point?
Versus the things I'm going to talk about, the best thing is a good mindset and a good base of knowledge about bears and your surroundings. So we really talk about being aware of your surroundings. but we definitely promote carrying bear spray and knowing how to use it. And that's a really good active deterrent if you're in an aggressive bear encounter. And as I mentioned before, a lot of these scenarios are as the result of a surprise encounter. So basically, you're trying to make your presence known if you're out and about. And if you can do that and not surprise a bear, it greatly reduces your chances of an aggressive encounter.
And also knowing the bear activity where you are, or if bears are an issue where you're at, is always a good idea. And going to wgfd.wyo.gov and the Bearwise Wyoming section is a great resource for everything bears, knowing how to interact with them, and even using that bear spray. That is very, very important.
And I appreciate you giving the shout out to Bearwise Wyoming. It's very interactive. There's a ton of information there for if you're camping, if you're fishing, if you're hunting, if you're just recreating, what you can do proactively around your house and things like that. We have a new video available for how to put up electric fencing, which is really great for people that have gardens or other things that bears would be attracted to. That's something we did more recently, basically stepwise approach of how to properly put up an electric fence to keep a bear out, which is something we really promote. And as you said with the bear spray, yeah, definitely know how to use it, have it readily available, and know where the safety is. It's very interesting to see people. Obviously, the bear's, if it's charging you, it's not going to wait for you to get the safety off. So you need to know how to do that beforehand.
And on that note, here at the Casper Game and Fish Office, we do have a few cans of inert bear spray. If folks are super curious and want to try it out, stop by, ask for some inert bear spray, and we can go out front on the front lawn and do a little practicing, because it does have that safety on it. And you can take it off without being afraid that you might pepper the inside of your house or your car. And it's just an inert spray. It still has the propellant, so you know kind of how it's going to be when you deploy it. It's one of those things that always amazes me, that I always picture it as being deployed as a single stream that you're going to kind of see where you're going to aim it. And it's going to you're going to have a lot of time to aim that and get it out, but that's not what it is. It's a cloud. And to use short, quick bursts, shoot down so that the cloud, rises up and can affect the mucous membranes of the animal that you're trying to deter. So it is something that is unique to try. And if folks want to know, don't hesitate to come out and try.
It's a lot like a gun. If you're carrying a gun, you need to know everything about that gun, where the safety is, how it works, how it reacts to certain things. You don't want anyone to get hurt, and they can get hurt really horribly with bear spray, to those that don't know how to use it. All right, wgfd.wyo.gov. Bearwise Wyoming is a great resource for you. Now, next week, we're going to have Dan back, and we're going to learn more about how you need to prepare your location for bears coming out of the den, because when they start coming out, they're going to start coming out really heavy. So, Dan, Janet, we will talk to you next weekend, and we thank you for all the info. Up next, we talk to Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports about what's happening around the store.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
Here we are at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, and Brian Woodward is here, general manager here. I got to tell you that you walk outside and you definitely want to start gearing up for anything and everything you're going to do this year.
Yeah, this last week, a week ago we were digging out snow, but that snow melted off really fast, and we hit some upper 70s here in Casper, and saw some wind to go with it, and that certainly made you feel like spring and ready to go fishing.
Now, I've seen that there are a couple of different locations that are seeing some water, but yet places like Glendo and Pathfinder are still under a very heavy cover of ice and may still be for a couple more weeks.
Yeah, this is that time we've kind of talked in the past about, there's still ice on the lake, but you might also be able to get a boat in. A guy really needs to be cautious about, putting a boat in at a ramp, but maybe having ice blow in and blocking that ramp, or the ice breaking and getting between you and the shoreline where your boat is, can't push that heavy block of ice. So there's definitely some reservoirs. Gray Rocks is open. Glendo's opening up nicely. It's not 100% yet. And we've even got some open pockets up at Alcova.
So if you get into a situation like that, you can't foresee it. You don't know that it's going to happen. What's the best way to remedy that issue?
Pray.
Yeah.
No,
you're going to sleep on your boat for a while. Or?
Well, the problem can be is that if your boat's between the shore and a chunk of ice, and that chunk of ice, I mean, we're talking that ice could be 6, 8, 10, 20 inches thick still, and that ice starts blowing, and the weight of that ice nothing will stop it, including your boat. So that ice will push your boat up onto shore or up onto the ice, and you're going to be stuck. So a guy just really has to be cautious because, there's guys that are out there on Glendo right now, and they're working their boats through some chunks of ice, and the little stuff isn't too much of a problem. A guy can usually get through that okay, but you just don't know what's on the other side of that. And so those big chunks, big blocks of ice, they can cause damages to your boat, but they can also just get you in between a shoreline that is going to cause some even more damage where that ice is pushing you up against rocks or problems.
And we've talked a lot over the last few weeks about how important it is to be prepared when you're going out on a boat like that, because what if something like that happens, or what if you get into a position where no one can come get you at this point, so you're stuck out there for a little while. So being prepared is very important.
Yeah, this is the time of year, especially, we've always talked about just layering up and then having a good set of rain gear. And if you're going this time of year somewhere like back to the mile, you might get stuck in mud somewhere where you might have to spend the night. So make sure you have yourself a good little, emergency prep kind of kit in the back of your truck.
And, we talk about how important boots are during the, early season and fall, but having a good pair of boots in the truck or in the car is always a good idea as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, muck boots this time of year to handle all that muck, the mud and all that other garbage that's out there, definitely comes in handy.
I've been going through my camping gear at the house, and you forget the stuff that you used all of it last year, or maybe you had a piece of your equipment break, and now is a good time to stock up on that.
Yeah, and this is the time of year that we're stocking up here at the store as well. So our Coleman stoves and our cots and sleeping bags and bed pads and all the Coglins, all the fire starters, compasses, all that trinket kind of stuff that you would need or want while you're out in the field. We've got a great supply of it now, so it's a good time to restock.
And of course, you got to get all your ORV tag and sticker and make sure that you've got all that paid for so you don't get in trouble. Yeah,
the state park passes, it's kind of a hassle anymore, but we still do them at the store. So you can get your annual day use passes. You can also get your camping permits. You can get your additional passes. Make sure that your fishing license is up to date because, we've talked before that no longer expires at the first of the year. It's 365 days from the last time you got it. So if you picked up a fishing license last April, it's going to expire again this April. So
get in here and see them at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And you had mentioned just a little while ago that you had some guys come in that wanted to start doing some fishing, and they needed to start from scratch. And you guys were able to help them out from the get-go.
Yeah, the pair of guys came in the other day. They're in town for getting some boat repairs done, and so they had a little time to spare. And they're walleye guys, and they've got quite a bit of walleye tackle. But we're going to branch out this year and do a little kokanee and laker fishing. And they're heading over to the gorge and up to Jackson Lake as a couple of their destination fisheries for that. So they're just kind of talking through the how tos and what tos, and we got them set up with some trolling gear. We got them some kokanee gear. We got them some jigging gear for vertical jigging those lakers, and just kind of worked through it and got them all set up, spooled up their lines for them, and they're all set to go now.
See, that's what you get here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, full service 24. I don't want to say 24/7, but
I'm not answering it 24/7.
Come on by and see them. And you guys have a great new website, which is awesome. It's rocky-mountain-sports.com. Check it out.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew and Brian from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports back. And Brian, we were just talking a little bit ago where, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports is a great place to get started before you actually get out on the water. But once you get out on the water, you got to kind of know the regulations, and you got to know the way that you need to treat the fish, because early in the season, middle of the season, the hot summer season, you really need to be informed of what's happening.
Yeah, this is a time of year where, especially on the walleye side of things, we have a lot of fish that are spawning. Even on the trout side, right? There's definitely, if you're a trout fisherman on the North Platte, you're going to come across some spawning beds or the reds that they call them. And there's certain regulations even on below Gray Reef where you're not allowed to fish during certain time frames to allow those fish the opportunity to spawn, right? So, beating up on these spawning fish just isn't necessarily, it's fun to catch fish, right? But we also want them to reproduce, and we want those fish to do their thing. So just being selective on our harvest, selective on our fishing methods. There's a lot of controversy on the trout side about peg and eggs, where the fish isn't actually taking a hook, it's taking a bead above a hook and then getting snagged on the outside of the mouth. So just so that we try to preserve what we have, we have to be kind of ethical and selective in what we're doing.
When you're out and you say selective, obviously someone's like, well, I don't know what fish I'm going to catch, so, how am I supposed to be selective? It's not catching that fish. It's what you do once you get the fish to the boat.
Just because you catch a fish doesn't mean you have to keep it. Especially our spawning fish, our game and fish doesn't do a whole lot of stocking efforts for walleye. They do some, but it's not as aggressive as it is as they do with the trout or the kokanee or some of the other species. And a reservoir like Glendo, it's almost 100% based on natural reproduction. So, this time of year, when that water hits 50, 55 degrees, those fish are up doing their thing and spawning and laying eggs, and we're hoping that, water levels stay consistent and the conditions stay good so those can hatch and we can have, great fishing like we've had for the last 5 to 10 years. But this time of year, there's a good chance you're going to catch even a spawned out female. And to me, a lot of guys say, well, it's already spawned out, so I'm gonna harvest it. Maybe it's a 26, 28 inch fish. I kind of have a rule in my boat that if we're gonna keep fish, we don't keep anything over 20 inches. Those 18 to 24 inch fish are probably the most productive spawners. And there's plenty of other fish. There's a lot of good 16 to 18 inch fish in that system that are good, quote unquote, eaters. Mm-hmm. And so if you harvest a 28 incher, that's completely up to you. There's no rules or laws against it. It's nice to be able to catch a trophy fish. And so The only way you're going to be able to continue to catch a trophy fish is to be selective in those fish that you are harvesting. And when you do catch a big fish, let it go.
Yeah. And you have your camera, you have your phone. There's going to be proof that you have a 28-inch fish, and I assume that that's probably a lot of it, or the guy wants to put it up on his wall or whatever. But still, thinking about the future of walleye is...
back in the day, a skin-mounted fish was pretty much our only option. You had to, take the fish whole, wrap it in a blanket or a towel, and, put it in your freezer and, take it to the taxidermist. But it still came down to it. It was really just how good of a paint job, that you can get, right? So anymore, you can get replicas done that look fantastic. They're going to last longer. And as long as the taxidermist that's doing your fish is specialized in walleyes and you got a good picture of, what the coloring of that fish was, it just makes more sense to go with a replica than it is to do a skin mount.
When you pull a fish like that out, what are you looking for? If you're kind of teetering on, okay, do I want to keep it? Do I want to not keep it? You have the rule of 20 inches in your boat. Obviously, there's a 5-inch gap between the two, because isn't the 15 the lowest limit? So, if it's 15 to 20, then maybe you'll keep it.
Yeah, At Glendo, it's a 15-inch minimum. There's no actual slot limit, but it does have a minimum. Honestly, like a 16 to 18-inch fish, that's, usually one fish is a pretty good meal for an individual. And in Wyoming, we just have, it's a one limit per person in possession. You can't go to the lake for a weekend and keep a daily limit each day. And it's a big misconception for people. if you've got a limit of fish in your freezer at home and you're going to go fishing, legally you can't put another limit in your because it's a 6 fish possession. You already have 6 in possession at home. A lot of people try to stockpile for the winter. Well, that, for one, it's illegal to do. You really just have to kind of just keep what you're going to eat fresh, I guess, is the best way to do it.
We had talked about, the 15 inches, the lowest limit in Glendo, but you have to be aware that Pathfinder and Alcova and Boyson and Buffalo Bill, they all have their own regulations.
Yeah, so there's no size limit at Glendo, and I think even at Buffalo Bill, I don't even think there's a possession limit, but that's something you'd have to verify that. Pathfinder really struggles for forage. So those fish, like a typical 15-inch fish at Glendo is a 3-year-old fish. But a 15-inch fish at Pathfinder might be 4 years old or 5 years old because it just doesn't have the forage base to grow as fast as those fish that are down at Glendo that are feeding on shad and perch and all those other species that are in there. Pathfinder primarily has, suckers, carp, trout, and walleye. And then it's got crawdads, but crawdads are kind of cyclic, and sometimes there's a good population of them, sometimes there's not. You're competing with pelicans and seagulls and cormorants and everything else eating that. So there's a lot of competition for the food source that's in Pathfinder. So a lot of times you just don't even find 18 to 22-inch fish up there. So if you're going to Pathfinder, set your limits a little bit lower for fish that you're going to keep, and you might be keeping 13 to 14-inch fish.
Using good judgment is always a good option when you're going out. State your claim before you go out there so that you have an idea that you don't have to waste time on the boat figuring out what you're going to do.
On our big game hunting, we don't really have an option for catch and release or waterfowl hunting or pheasant hunting. It's you can't shoot it and say, okay, well, it's a great looking one. I'm going to take a picture and let it go, right? But on the fishing side, we can, right? So let's do the right thing. Keep some selective fish. If you really have to mount a 30-incher, do what you have to do. But I'm telling you, there's some great replica options out there, and don't feel like if you don't keep a 30-inch fish that you're not going to be able to have a memory of a lifetime.
All right, and if you have any more questions about that, come on out here, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. They're good about the regulations and making sure that you guys know exactly what you need to know when you leave.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome in on Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. We've gone through the hunting season, and now we've gone through the ice fishing season, and got Big Grizz in with us today. And Grizz, I'm telling you, the ice is still out there, and it's really causing some issues for guys that are ready to get their boats out on the water.
Yeah, this is a very bordered time of year. You never know in Wyoming. I have clients that have been calling me already that we're already fishing this time of year in the years past.
Right.
A lot of guys like this mid-April time to go catch some, nice big trout that are getting ready to do their thing out of the reservoirs or stuff like that. And I just can't get them out right now. We got a little bit of ice left on Alcova. It's working its way out slowly. Pathfinder's still iced up at this point in time. So we're going to be a couple more weeks, I think, if we can get some of these warmer days that we're having right now. Could be as little as 3 to 4 days before Alcova opens up, but Pathfinder's looking pretty solid right now and got some ice on it. So keep the boat put away for now, but it's a good time to check your oil, wheel bearings, water pump impeller, all those essential things that could hold you up on the lake. Now's a great time to get the boat uncovered and vacked out and gear ready and get ready to rock. Which
is a great point, because why delay anymore?
Sure.
Get it taken care of when you can't get out on the water. But it's been a pretty exciting winter for you. You do some guiding for waterfowl hunting and kind of go all over the country to get that taken care of. And you got the guide service going on here, so it's busy for you.
It's that time of year, the temperature starts dropping in the fall and things start getting exciting, with fall hunting. Obviously you've been talking about that all fall and into the winter. That's an opportunity for me to run away where it's temperatures are a little bit warmer. So we head on down south and chase snow geese and waterfowl down there from the month of December through about mid-February, early March. And then we come back and have a month of relaxation, getting some gear going just like like I said, talking about getting the boat ready. And then as soon as we get some ice off, we'll start chasing the infamous kokanee salmon. So that's the goal.
The kokanee salmon, which right here in our backyard is one of the best places in Wyoming to catch a kokanee, isn't it?
Yeah, we're blessed to have a couple reservoirs real close to us that have the kokanee salmon in it. Obviously, Pathfinder has some, Alcova has some, and Desmet up in Sheridan area has some as well. Otherwise, the number one spot in the state is Flaming Gorge. So the guys that don't want to drive, the couple hours to the gorge and spend the weekend down there's some great opportunity right here in the backyard.
When you're catching the kokanee, do they mimic what you would fish on like a walleye or a trout, or is it their own type of fishing you have to go after?
Kokanee salmon is I would say leaning more towards the trout side of things. Okay. There are some guys that accidentally catch them on pop gear and a worm. If you're trolling, it is a trolling game. You can catch them through the ice, vertical jigging. It's a lot tougher. I don't target them, obviously, because I'm down south. If you're pulling, trout gear, you have a chance of catching kokanee. You are going to catch the trout. If you're pulling kokanee gear, which is a little bit different, we use sling blades, 4-inch flashers, short leaders, 6 to 8 inches, back to a squid, which is what we call a hoochie, and shoe peg corn and fake maggots. So that's kind of my go-to. If you are using that, you're still going to catch trout. So the cool part is you can go out and target kokanee and struggle your butt off, but you still get some fish in between to give you something to do.
When you're going after kokanee, you're out on the water and the only thing you're thinking about is kokanee salmon. What's the scenario for the water? I mean, obviously now it's iced up and it's going to be cold for a while now. Are they a little warmer, or do they like the colder waters?
So kokanee love the thermocline. I think before in the show that we had, we talked a little bit about that. The thermocline is where the warm water surface temperature meets the cold water on the bottom of the lake, and it creates an ecosystem for the plankton, zooplankton, phytoplankton, things like that. Well, because kokanee are gill rakers, they're constantly swimming around eating all day long. They kind of live below that thermocline. Well, obviously, first thing in the year when the ice comes off, your water temperature's pretty, it's way cold down deep and mildly colder on the surface because it just lost its ice. But as the ice comes off and we start getting some sun on it, that temperature change is going to warm up the surface temperature. And you may see the thermocline down, between 3 to 5 feet. So that's a good hint for you guys that want to chase these early season kokanee. If you want to catch early season kokanee, the thing to do is fish that top 0 to 10 feet of water. The thing with being that shallow is most guys only let out enough line to get that deep. So you want to really lighten your rigs to let out more line because these fish are super spooky. If you're one of the first 50 boats on the water for the season, these fish have heard nothing but ice pinging all winter long, So now we're starting to get some noise. We're starting to get some wave crash. We're starting to get some other stuff going on. So you get real skittish. So just keep that in mind. A lot of the times, first part of the year, I run 1/4 ounce bell sinker on an OR16 snap weight. I put it 1 rod length. If you're using 8-foot rods, make sure your flasher's down at the handle. Your weight's all the way at the tip. If you're using longer rods, same thing. It doesn't matter. And then I run those out anywhere between 80 and 120 feet out the back of the boat. And it gets you down in that 0 to 5, 0 to 10 feet of the surface. And a lot of times that's where you're going to be catching those kokanee this time of year.
Is going out early in the day, midday, late day, is it better for the kokanee?
Kokanee traditionally are an early morning thing. As light, they're real light sensitive. They're also, like I said, noise and motoring sensitive. So as the season comes on, these fish go a little bit deeper. And as you know, if you fish Alcova more than Pathfinder, the recreational guys start showing up around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And that's usually a good time to be done. So if you're an early bird, you can hit the water at 5:30 as the sun's starting to come up. That's the perfect time to start catching some of these kokanee.
You had mentioned that they're a little skittish at this point as they haven't heard any boats or anything like that. How long should you wait out until you move around?
It really depends on the person. Some of the guys, they just love to be out there and they can just work from one end of the lake to the other all day long, or it might take them all day to do one pass. Say you start down by the marina and you're trolling at 1.5 miles an hour, which isn't very fast. You work your way all the way to the dam and then turn around and come all the way back. That might be your whole fishing day. It just depends on what you want to do. One of the big keys with kokanee is electronics. So if you're running a good fish finder on your boat, it doesn't have to be a $1,200 fish finder. If you have something that can read, your water temperatures, your depth, your speed, and you can adjust those a little bit, you can probably pick up your thermocline on your fish finder, which will show this fuzzy gray or blue line right in the middle of your graph. And that kind of gives you an idea like, oh, well, my thermocline's 15 feet down. I need to let out a little more line to get down to that spectrum, or I need to add a little more weight, shorten up my line a little bit to get to that. So a good fish finder will tell you a lot. If you're in an area and you aren't marking fish or you aren't catching fish, within, I'd say, 30 minutes to an hour, pick up and go. Move 200 yards, move 500 yards, try something different. I'll give you a little trick of the trade. This is something that my wife gets mad at me because I share all the goodies. But the first part of the year, I traditionally catch most of my kokanee out of Alcova Reservoir on the south end, so towards the marina and the mouth of the canyon. I spend kind of that little circle out in front of the marina, in front of the boat club, all the way down in front of the water ski club, over parallel to the mouth of the canyon, and then back. I kind of run an oval shape between the island that's submerged out there, and I kind of just work that area this time of the year. As the water warms up a little bit, they start to transition from the boat club down to Okie Beach through the narrow there. And so I'll kind of start making an L shape. And I just kind of chase the fish where they want to go. The recreational guy, it's a little harder for you to find some fish because you aren't out there every day like some of us are.
Right.
But if you just keep that in mind as the temp starts to warm up, we get into April, May, that kind of stuff. May, start moving towards Okie Beach, end of May, starting into June. They're going to slide down even farther, heading towards the dam. They're chasing that deeper water. The deeper water's down on the dam end of the reservoir. So you get into June, mid-June, end of July, you're pretty much going to find me down there cutting a triangle between Black Beach, Cabin Point, and across from there. I mean, I'm just working that area because the fish move to the deeper water. But first thing in the year, stay up by the inlet and give it a try.
What about the way where they're talking about flooding and higher waters this year? Is that going to play a big part of this year's fishing?
I don't really have an answer to that because I'm still on the downswing opinion on the lowering of the water. So we had a little slower year last year, and it was because the winter before they were doing the dam maintenance. So they dropped that water way down. They flushed way late in the season on the North Platte system. So my hypothesis was like the low water drop, the fluctuation and the rise kind of slowed some stuff down. So I don't have an opinion yet. It could be a great year. I can tell you my best year 3 years ago for kokanee out of Alcova was a year that the levels came up like they were supposed to. Flush happened in March, which pulls current and water through Alcova Reservoir, which keeps those fish a little more stable. Everything happened like it has in the past, and it panned out to be a good year. We were catching great-sized kokanee all year long, and it was just a spectacular year. And so we'll see what this year has to bring. So
yeah, well, and everything that I've heard from a bunch of different people is kind of what you're saying is when the water levels were perfect or even a little higher, the fishing was a lot better.
Absolutely.
You still doing some guiding this year, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, we're still running some guide stuff. Obviously, we're at the mercy of some ice, but if you can't get a hold of me personally, you can reach out to the guys at Sloan's General Store in Alcova. They'll put you in contact with me. Otherwise, you can take a look at our Facebook page. It's Fish Nuts Outfitters on Facebook, NUTZ for nuts. And send me a message. Reach out. Keep an eye out. I think we're going to try to do some shows for Sportsman's this year, maybe Rocky Mountain as well. But all those guys too. I mean, if you're looking for tackle, you ain't got it. Check out Sportsman's, Rocky Mountain, Discount Sports, Wagner's Outdoor Outfitters. All those guys have a great selection. Sloan's, the marina, even at Alcova, has sling blades and shoe peg corn and stuff like that in stock, stuff that I've been able to get in there and keep in stock for guys that are wanting to learn kokanee. So there's a lot of gear around. Some of those guys will help you, but if you're going to go look for some stuff, pink, orange, green, sling blades, OR16 snap weights, and get yourself a versatile piece of pyramid, some form of lead, from 1/4 ounce all the way down to, I don't ever fish more than 2.5 ounces, but that gives you a variety for the year, and that should get you started. And other than that, pink shoe peg corn, pink Berkeley gulp maggots, or green Berkeley gulp maggots, and just get out there on the water and start pulling some stuff around. Obviously, first of the year, stay shallow. As we get deeper into July, start going deeper, 30 feet, 30, 35 feet, but I don't ever fish any deeper.
All right. If you want to get more info on kokanee fishing, you need any questions answered about what Grizz just talked about, you can hit me up in the My Country 95.5 app, and I'll get you in touch, and you'll get all the info that you need. Man, we appreciate it, and I love having you on and all kinds of great information.
No problem, man. We look forward to it. You all have a good season, and catch them up, and we'll talk to you soon.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.